What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of Can of Heaven. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only and to always do your own research, to come to your own conclusions, to make your own answers, to make your own decisions. And I believe in your ability to do so. In today's episode, I want to talk about how to manifest and how to get all those things that you so desperately desire and the things that you dream about and the things that you really, really want in your life. How do you get those things? So, I always talk about how manifestation is really easy and you just basically have to imagine it and, it just falls in your lap. But it's a lot more mental work if you are blocking it the ways that I myself have blocked this. And we all have our own blockages, so you're gonna have to find yours. But it doesn't have to be this crazy hard thing. There's a hair sticking up that's gonna bother me. Anyways, basically, manifestation is pretty simple. You know what you want, how do you get it? You allow it to flow into your reality without any resistance. And how do you allow that to happen? How do you get rid of resistance? Resistance is usually how much you let not having something bother you and the emotions that it's bringing out of not having that thing. Like if you want your dream car, but you're really frustrated with the car that you currently have, then you will continue to be in that frustration. And what's manifesting is the frustration for your current situation, and your current situation will continue to play out and play out and play out and replay and replay. So, if you want to get to the next stage, manifesting is just kind of like leveling up or getting to the next step. So, how do you get to the next step? You know what you want, and it's really simple to imagine yourself having that car and daydream about having that dream car. Use that to your advantage. Usually, when you're daydreaming, you don't have any association with this current reality because you know it's a fantasy. And because you don't have anything holding you back from feeling good in that fantasy, you have the power to manifest through that fantasy, whatever, through imagining. And that's what manifestation is. That's what leaping timelines, that's what that is. It's you basically having a childlike mind again and just being open to whatever possibilities are open at that very time. So, I'm gonna make this very short, sweet, and simple. How do you manifest? Just daydream. Daydream about the things you want. That is the most simple that I can possibly put it, because when you're daydreaming, you don't have any sort of association with negative feelings because you are just daydreaming. You're just imagining something that could be, even though it's not here. And because you're imagining something that could be, you don't have any resentful or negative feelings associated with that daydream because it's just a daydream. You're just daydreaming. Unless somebody told you that daydreaming was a bad thing, unless somebody told you daydreaming is disassociating, unless somebody told you that that's delusional, then you don't have any negative emotions associated with just sitting there and daydreaming. And if you do have negative emotions tied to daydreaming, get rid of those. How do you get rid of those? Tell yourself repeatedly, it is okay to do the things that I want to do. If I feel like daydreaming, I am allowed to daydream. Most people disassociate without even fucking realizing it. So the fact that I can sit here and purposefully disassociate, right? Because people want to add that negative connotation to imagination. If my creativity is so harmful to myself, this is why people tell me not to do it, right? But my creativity isn't hurting anybody. So I'm gonna sit here and imagine what my life would look like if I had this particular thing that I really, 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 really want. I know I'd be super duper excited to wake up every day and get into my brand new dream car. So imagine yourself waking up and looking outside your window and being like, wow, I did it. I have that car. And just imagine that over and over and over and over and over. And it doesn't have to be like this obsessive thing, just because I feel like the more obsessed you are with something, you actually put more resistance to that because of the amount of the amount of obsession you hold for this thing. Only because usually when you're obsessed with something, you look at things in not so clear lighting. And so it's kind of like, if I'm obsessed with everything in my wardrobe has to be Nike, if I have one sock that just happens to be Adidas, I'd probably freak out. And why would I freak out? Because of my obsession with Nike. And because I only want Nike. Because I'm obsessed with it. And that's what I mean by, like, don't overdo it. Don't obsessively think about the things you want. Because then it'll put a strain on your current situation. You won't look at your current situation as a good situation. You're gonna look at your current situation and be like, this is not what I imagined for myself. This is absolute dog shit. Why did my parents have me and now they want me to actually do something with my existence when I have been trying to do something with my existence and it's nothing like the way that I imagined it? So just don't get carried away with the amount of daydreaming that you're doing, just because, everything in moderation is good for you. But if you exit the amount of moderation, or if you're going overboard, then it turns into a bad thing. Anything that you do over an excessive amount is going to be rooted back to something that's not so good for you. So just keep that in mind. I'm not telling you to just overly obsess with the things you want, because that creates resistance and then that doesn't allow for you to have anything come in. So, how do you daydream with this balance? Basically, what I do is right before I go to bed, this is how I get myself to fall asleep. This is something that really relaxes me and it puts me to bed fairly quickly. I put my head on the pillow, I do my nightly routine, which is going to be different for you. And as soon as I'm ready to go to sleep, I will imagine my scenario, my manifestation. So, for example, I'll give you a real personal example. I imagine what my life would look like in a year from now. And I close my eyes and I imagine myself as this 25-year-old with all these things that I really, really want. And all these things that I see myself in. Like, I see myself in this particular house, with this particular car, with this particular setup, with this particular job. And so everything in this fantasy or this daydream is everything that I've ever wanted. And it's amazing and it's perfect. And it puts me in a state of like, oh, I did it. I'm proud of myself. And I'm going to sit here and be proud of myself because I did this. Nobody else did this. And so I sit there and I'm feeling proud of myself. And then boom, I fall asleep. And then I wake back up. And I do the whole thing over again every single time that I go to sleep. And the reason that I do it before I go to sleep, I've always done it before I went to sleep. But I never understood what the power of sleep was until about like 2 years ago, when I got in here, in this place where I'm filming. I imagined this, and it wasn't something that I was like really, really obsessed with. I just imagined it like a couple times here and there, and then all of a sudden, boom, it was here. And I realized that the reason why you should do it before you go to sleep is because you won't have any resistance while you're sleeping. And you don't have any negative emotions while you're sleeping. Unless you're dreaming about something. But most of the time, most people don't remember or recall their dreams. And you go into a state of emptiness when you're sleeping, right? Your consciousness is no longer there. You're not conscious. You're nothing again until you wake back up. And when you wake back up, you have a series of ups and downs. Like either you really enjoy your job or you really hate your job, so that's an up or down for you. Either you really like getting up at a particular time or you don't like doing that at all. So it's an up or down for you. And either it's just like throughout your day, there's minor inconveniences, and those inconveniences, depends on the person. Some people really don't let that shit bother them, but for others, they do let it bother them. And because of that, it creates this, it's a slowing of momentum. It's a lot slower to go up a hill than it is to just go down a hill. And so you have to, in a sense, ride the wave of not having resistance. And when you go to sleep, you don't have resistance because you don't have any form of like, this is not going to happen for me. Today was not a good day. You're not having thoughts. And usually your thoughts are the wavelength that you're riding. And when you have a series of negative thoughts or a string of negative thoughts, then that's what you're riding. If you're constantly like, oh, fuck everything, blah, 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 like just nasty thoughts are running through your mind, you're riding that wave because it's the easiest one to ride rather than to switch it up and be like, oh no, everything is perfect, everything is great, because it's not. And it's like the same thing with sleeping. You don't have any resistance because nothing is happening. You don't have a reason to feel like shit. And if anything, sleep it feels good. At least for me. I don't know about other people. And I used to be somebody who would just stay up for hours and hours and hours and hours because I'm like, I can sleep when I'm dead. But sleep really feels good when you're able to just enjoy it for what it is. And obviously not everything is going to be the greatest, which is why I talk about, do this before you sleep, because it's easier to not have any feelings towards sleep than it is to not have feelings towards the bad things that happen in our daily lives, like those minor inconveniences. Like if you're driving to work and you're going to be late and you're getting every single red light on your way to work. That's a really small thing, and for most people they'd be like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't really affect me, I'm going to be late either way. But for somebody who wants to be on time, who knows they're going to get in trouble, that's what they're thinking about. So it's easier to ride the wave of good feelings when you're sleeping. And when you do that, aka you daydream right before you go to sleep, you're actually entering the dream state before you even enter the dream state. So you won't even notice that you're falling asleep. You'll just go to sleep and then wake up. And because you're doing the daydream before you go to sleep, your thoughts are going to consist of the same thing. It's going to ride that wave until you wake back up. And then once you wake back up and you have a thought, as soon as you have that thought, that's when your vibration will change. So you ride that wave all night. And because you're riding that for a good amount of time, it puts momentum behind the manifestation. And manifesting, like I said, it's not this super duper complicated thing. You just have to be open-minded. And that's another thing that I feel like most adults struggle with. It's the having open mind. And the reason for that is because we think that we learn shit along the way of our journey, along the way of our life. We think that we actually know something when we don't. Like, for example, you learn that if you go to school and you do good in school, that you're probably a smart human being. Not always the case. I know a lot of people who never showed up to class, who still passed all the classes, all the tests, everything. And the best example I can give you is like one of my siblings has photographic memory. And this particular sibling didn't ever study for courses in school, didn't study for tests, and still passed with A's and B's. And the only time that this person was ever failing a class or had a low grade in class was because they didn't put effort. because they didn't want to, because they didn't even need to try, so they just didn't try. And I remember my sibling telling me a story about how one of their friends was so bummed out because they studied for hours for the same test that my sibling had to do, and my sibling didn't study at all and passed with flying colors, and their friend didn't pass. And so that's what I mean, like, we don't really know anything. As human beings, we trick ourselves into thinking that we have it all figured out. But just because I'm an adult now, I have all this life experience doesn't mean that I actually know what life consists of and the answers to all these things that people think they should have had figured out by now. Like, for example, something that I was thinking about today is the fact that I don't have everything figured out and I don't need to have it figured out. All I have to do is keep an open mind and do things with a positive mindset, because that's the only thing that I can do. It's the only way that I can live my life, even if my life is falling into pieces, even if my life is crumbling right now, even if my health is not doing the greatest. So I feel like you just have to hold an open mind. And for most adults, that's hard to do because you think that, well, if I go to work on time, then I won't have a problem with my boss. And then you go to work on time, and somehow your boss is still a piece of dookie towards you. And they're just rude and they're just obnoxious towards you for no reason. You don't really have anything figured out. You can be like, well, if I am a really good person, and if I tell that person over there that I think that they're awesome and all these crazy things, that they'll like me. And then you go over there and you're like, oh, I love you and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, ew, get away from me. You don't know anything. We just think we know shit because we feel better thinking that we know shit. It makes us feel better to sit down and be like, yeah, I have it figured out. We don't know shit. We don't. As a whole species. We don't know what the fuck is going on. We're just on a floating rock, trying to make the best out of it. And right now we're just playing a game of Monopoly because we don't know anything. We don't know what to do next. You feel me? So, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up and conclude this episode. How do you manifest? Keep an open mind. We don't know anything. Okay? So, with that in mind, the things that you're asking for are minuscule compared to the things that, as a species, we can do. Like creating technology that allows us to fucking fly. Creating technology that allows us to go to the moon, to breathe in space. What you're asking for is not something that's super special, so you shouldn't feel like you're never going to get it because you're that special. That you specifically are not going to get your specific manifestations because you're special. We're not special as a whole, which means that when you ask for something, it's usually given to you because the universe is like, here, leave me alone. I got bigger fish to fry. And not to be rude, but most of the time we think our problems are bigger than they are. So, how to manifest? Have an open mind. Have an open mind and fantasize about those things you want, but don't obsess. When I say fantasize, it's not obsession. Don't obsess. Just daydream before you go to sleep of what your life would look like with that thing. What would your life look like with that thing that you so desperately want? What would your life look like if you had $1 million, if that's what you're trying to manifest? What would your life look like if you had a lot of money? What would your life look like with that dream car, that dream person, that dream house, that dream career? What would your life look like? And then let yourself pass out. And that momentum will continue to go and, exist while you're sleeping. Because that's the last thought that you had before you went to sleep. And we don't know if we think while we're sleeping. You know what I mean? I don't know shit. You don't know shit. We all don't know shit. So just daydream right before you go to bed. Keep an open mind. And, be positive. Know that this thing will happen for you as long as you're not putting too much weight to it. It shouldn't be the main key importance to your life if you're trying to manifest something, because then that falls under obsess or having an obsession. Like if you're like, I want $1 million and this is why, and you're constantly thinking about it and you can't get it out of your mind, and every single time that you look at your bank account and it doesn't say 1 million, you're like, ugh. So try not to be obsessed with things. And even if you're obsessed with something in a really positive way, it doesn't mean that's always gonna play out that way. And that's it. I'm gonna end this here. So thanks for tuning in and tapping in to Weekend of Heaven. I hope this was helpful in any way, shape, and form, and I will be doing a lot of these manifestation uploads. A lot this, I won't say this month because I'm only gonna upload like 8 times. There's 4 weeks, I upload twice a week. I'm only gonna upload 8 times, so most likely these will all be about manifestation. Hopefully it will click into place for you, and if it doesn't, we'll just go to the next one, and we'll continue to try again. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in and tapping into Weekend of Heaven. I upload Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and this video is now on YouTube. So if that's something that you're interested in, it's also, they're both a Can of Heaven. My podcast just has 888 at the end of it, and it's on all platforms. And the YouTube just is Can of Heaven. So, and they both have the same background. Anyways, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. I hope that you have a good day, good night, whenever you're listening. Take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I'm not your life, I'm not your shoes. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.